They fear him. They erase him. Even now. He didn't write a treatise. He didn't sit in a salon. He didn't sign a constitution. He burned plantations. He fought slave masters. He dreamed of freedom. Before liberté, égalité, fraternité, before the guillotine, before the Boston Tea Party, before New Hampshire license plates said, live free or die, before Martin had a dream, before Malcolm said by any means necessary, there was Mackandal, a black freedom fighter on the island they would one day call Haiti, Haiti. Why don't they teach you this? In this video, we'll uncover the life of François Makandal, freedom fighter, healer, rebel, and, as leading historian Sylviane Diouf has shown, most probably a Muslim. We'll place him not at the margins of world history, but at its burning center. 2 centuries before Malcolm X, 100 years before the US abolished slavery, decades before the British outlawed the transatlantic slave trade, before Jefferson wrote that all men are created equal, before Robespierre dreamed of virtue and terror, before the storming of the Bastille, Mackandal was already fighting, already lighting the fire that would become a revolutionary current in Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Keep watching to see how Africans, Muslims, and Indigenous Americans were not just victims of empire. They were at the forefront of the movements that gave birth to modern republics. France, Haiti, the United States. Watch until the very end to understand why this man is still so dangerous, why his memory is still erased, and what happens when we remember and honor him. Mackandal was carrying a fire older than the Haitian Revolution, a struggle as old as colonization itself. After 1492, Spanish authorities feared Muslim insubordination so deeply they banned Muslims from the Americas. But slave traders found a way around it. They kidnapped African Muslims, forced them to convert, and sold them anyway. As feared, many of these Muslims did rebel, and they often allied themselves with non-Muslim Africans and indigenous peoples in the Caribbean and Latin America. The first major slave revolt in the Americas? 1522, on the island of Hispaniola, which would become the land of Haiti. This revolt was led by Wolof Muslims from Senegal. Wolofs soon led similar uprisings in Puerto Rico, Colombia, and Panama. The colonial powers understood what was happening. They banned Africans from entering indigenous communities. One runaway Muslim, Pedro Xilofo, was found sheltering in a native village in what is now Costa Rica. For that crime, he was sentenced to be boiled alive in 1540. Boiled for refusing slavery, for crossing lines, for joining hands across communities against the rising machinery of empire. These early fires would ignite a blaze, a revolution like no other, the one that would erupt in Haiti. Haiti.
I'm Dr. Jason Idris Sparks, street scholar and poet, exploring visions of the good life and beauty in Islamic contexts with you.
In her groundbreaking book, Servants of Allah, African Muslims Enslaved in the Americas, historian Sylviane Diouf shows that Muslims played a leading role in the Haitian Revolution of 1791 to 1804. At the time, Haiti was known as Saint-Domingue. It was France's wealthiest colony. But French settlers there faced enormous resistance from maroons and rebels. Muslims led major maroon armies, sometimes thousands strong, pillaging plantations and white settlements. Sylviane Diouf writes, "The most famous of the pre-revolution maroon leaders was without a doubt François Makandal, formerly employed on a sugar plantation. One day, as he was working the sugar mill, one of his hands got caught in the wheel and had to be severed. As he could no longer cut the cane, he became a cattleman, later running away. For 18 years, Mackandal was at large, living in the mountains but making frequent incursions on the plantations to deliver death. He organized a network of devoted followers and taught them how to make poison, which they used against their owners or against other slaves in order to ruin the slaveholders. His reputation was such that a French document of 1758 estimates, with much exaggeration no doubt, the number of deaths he provoked at 6,000 over 3 years. This passage underscores the revolutionary weight of Mackandal's legacy, as confirmed by one of the leading scholars in the field. According to Diouf, Mackandal was a literate West African Muslim, likely of Mandingo origin. He was learned in Arabic and may have been considered a Sufi, since he was reputed to have predicted the future, received divine inspirations, and provided his fighters with powerful amulets, which came to be called Mackandals in popular parlance. Far from a chaotic rebellion, he shared with his followers a strategic vision for long-term organized resistance against white supremacist chattel slavery. After 2 decades of battle, he was captured and burned at the stake in 1758. Many of his supporters claimed he did not burn, but disappeared on that day. Much like Muslim warriors in West Africa, Mackandal drew upon a long tradition of religious knowledge, ritual expertise, and martial techniques in his armed struggle. With their reputed supernatural powers and military prowess, Muslim leaders instilled fear in settlers and galvanized the revolutionaries. Their fluency in Arabic allowed them to craft protective amulets inscribed with Quranic verses and to communicate beyond the enemy's grasp. According to Diouf, even Boukman, the legendary leader who helped spark the Haitian Revolution, may have been Muslim. He is credited with launching the General Slave Revolt during a mass gathering of enslaved Africans and Maroons at Bois Caïman in 1791. Diouf contends that Boukman came from Jamaica, an English colony. In English, literate African Muslims were often called bookman, men who had memorized the Book of Allah, the Holy Quran. If Diouf's theory is accurate, it does not negate Boukman's historical association with Vodun and other spiritual traditions in the Caribbean and Africa. Non-Muslim Africans on both sides of the Atlantic often collaborated with Muslims and sought to benefit from their expertise. Such alliances were in fact a crucial element to revolutionary success in Haiti. From 1770 to 1776, decades before France erupted, Sufi scholar and warrior Cherno Suleiman Baal led a revolution in the Futa Toro region of Senegambia. His successor, al-Qâdir Khan, didn't just end corruption. He and his circle of Maliki scholars abolished slavery itself. Not just among Muslims. Entirely. They closed slave routes, refuted passage to French slavers. Their ideas would eventually influence British abolitionists. That's right. African Muslims inspired the British, not the other way around. In 1791, the Haitian Revolution began. It was led by people like Boukman and Toussaint Louverture, the first black head of state in the Americas. In 1804, Haiti became the first black republic in modern history, the first modern state born from a slave revolt, a republic born just after the US and France. But unlike them, Haiti Haiti did not build its freedom on exclusion. It flipped racial ideology upside down. In the Haitian constitution, you could be white-skinned, but if you stood against slavery, you were legally black. If you defended slavery, you were white. Now that is revolutionary to the core. It questions the entire racial logic of the modern colonial world system.
If you're enjoying my explorations of beauty and excellence in Islamic contexts, please feel free to share the love by liking, commenting, sharing your thoughts, subscribing, and of course, offering a prayer.
Mackandal's rebellion lit the spark that became a blaze. The fire spread across every Atlantic shore. Remember how the Spanish outlawed interactions between Africans and indigenous peoples? Nothing makes tyrants more afraid than communication between oppressed groups. 2 decades after Mackandal's death, and a decade before the Haitian Revolution, a massive uprising shook the Andes from 1780 to 1783. This revolutionary movement was led by Túpac Amaru II, an indigenous Peruvian and direct descendant of the last Inca ruler. Haiti's victory lit up the entire hemisphere. In 1808, Ousmane Dan Fodio founded the Sokoto Caliphate, the most influential Islamic revolutionary state in 19th century Africa. It stretched across what is now northern Nigeria and neighboring lands. It became a model for Islamic revolutions led by the Fulbe of West Africa. Dan Fodio's daughter, Nana Asma'u, was a major Muslim scholar, poet, Sufi, and reformer. She authored 8 classical poems and 3 prose works in Arabic, 42 long poems in her native Fula, and 21 in Hausa, the most widely spoken language in the Sokoto Caliphate. She also established networks of women educators whose legacy of learning circles continues in northern Nigeria to this day. Haiti and West Africa's revolutions sparked an Atlantic wave. Between 1808 and 1826, every Spanish and Portuguese colony in the Americas won independence, except Cuba and Puerto Rico. And between 1804 and 1844, a series of slave rebellions erupted in northeastern Brazil and Cuba. During the Muslim revolts in Bahia, in Brazil, insurgents wore white skullcaps and tunics, just like their peers in West Africa. These revolts and revolutions across the Atlantic, in which African Muslims played a major role, shook white capitalist power. In an age of uprising, slavery was increasingly costly, both financially and in terms of public opinion. Abolition was in the air, but not ratified in the United States until 1865, nor in Brazil until 1888, a full century after the Futa Toro abolition in West Africa. The French and American revolutions were part of a broader Atlantic movement, led by Africans like Mackandal. And yet, they don't teach you this. Why not? Why don't they say his name? Why do most people with a high school education around the world know about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, but not Mackandal? Why is it so dangerous to remember a man who fought one of the most brutal slavery regimes in history? Because remembering him would mean rethinking everything. Because his machete did not just cut cane. It cut through the lie of white supremacy. Mackandal isn't gone. He's just not shown. But you've seen him now. So I ask you again, why don't they say his name? Well, I am here to say it. Say it with me. Mackandal. Mackandal. Mackandal.